We don't know what we're calling the show yet, do we? We're really not going with the name.
No, we don't
No.
know yet.
Okay. In case this pilot episode does air, because I think as we kind of get everything going, we're going to record stuff, and I think they will come out. Maybe they're going to be behind a membership paywall because we're going to say some shit on here that can't go anywhere else. Maybe we decide later, you know what? It's got to be clean for Apple purposes or whatever, or it's not. I'm not sure. But I thought of combustion. And Nick had a nice little ha-ha when I said, hey, what about combustion? I said, boom, if I can make you laugh or actually type ha-ha, ha-ha in a text, I think that's a win.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was a funny moment because you said to me like, hey, we're thinking of names. And for anybody that's never done this, I mean, I'll say it for me. I think coming up for names and stuff, it's like one of the hardest things for me to do. I'm not built that way, right? So when you said it, hey, I got to laugh, and yeah, we may roll with that.
Okay, I think you're built for it. You just got to be kind of gassed up a little bit to be like, you know what, I can let the creative, flows, the juices flow. That's okay. But so we're starting this podcast, whether we call it combustion or we call it the Car Bros. I don't know, whatever it ends up being.
Yeah.
I think we can mutually agree that we decided to do it because the market at large, in my opinion, needs some new content. It needs to be infused with some new rejuvenation for what's going on with the collector world, the car market, auto loans, manufacturing, all that kind of stuff. And you are by far top 2 people that I've ever met, ever known, ever been a friend with, worked with in any capacity that really understands the industry.
Yeah. Well, look, I don't want to get too much of let me tell you about myself because I think that can get a little I don't love listening to that. So the abridged version is I've been in the car business for 25 years. I have today work with a lot of car collections. I buy and sell cars for customers. And I also do, the detailing. I set up service for customers. I work with manufacturers. I work with dealers. And so I have this business that I've built over a 25-year career that just gives me a unique perspective of the car world. And you and I have had this discussion, and I'll bounce this back to you, is I think it's really important for people to hear this. A lot of people commenting on the car world have never made money in the car business. And I think that's where you kind of put it in my head of my history, and I give you this credit, is that my history is a little bit more unique than people that are putting out content. Putting out content for content's sake, I think is a lot of times what we see is that somebody's just a content creator. The difference in this show is we're not just content creators. We actually have businesses that make money in the auto world. Right. I think that's the unique thing that we bring.
Yeah, and so all in all, how long have you been in the auto world? 20 plus years?
25 years.
25 years.
1998 was my first year.
98.
Yeah.
Bro, if people looked
I didn't
at
even
you...
have my driver's license yet.
Really?
No. 3 months before I got my driver's license, I had a buddy. Matter of fact, he just visited me here in Vegas. I hadn't seen him in a very long time. We talked about it because he's like, I can't believe what we did in 1998 is still what you're doing. And I go, yeah, man, I stuck with it. And so here was my story. I had a buddy literally said, hey, man, this guy down the street, he owns some kind of car business, and he's looking for people to detail the cars. You want to come? I go, yeah, I don't have anything to do on the weekends because sports, where I grew up, they didn't do a lot of stuff on the weekend at the time. It was all Monday through Friday, so I had the weekend free. And I loved cars. I couldn't even drive one yet. Went down there, started detailing cars, never stopped. Stayed in the car business from then on. The funniest part of that story is that guy today is in federal prison that I work for some title issues across state lines that became a federal situation. But look, man, I made a ton of money. This guy paid us cash under the table. He paid us piecework. And I got to be around every cool car I wanted to be around and crappy cars, let's be honest. I started at the bottom of this business, so it was a lot of crappy cars, good cars. But, I mean, that's where, in 1998, man, yeah, 25 years.
Dang, that's wild. I have not worked in the automotive industry for 25 years or anywhere near it, but for the last 12 years, I've been podcasting in the sense of producing, co-hosting, hosting content, running brick and mortar businesses, running digital businesses, and a lot of that being like segments of it in the car world. So when I early on first started podcasting, for instance, it was because I was interested in 3 things: business, politics, and cars. I doubt we'll talk politics on this show, and we might talk business because there actually is a lot of business aspects, to the automotive world that we have interest in and also actively in. But then you have the people who kind of run like the media, I guess, world at large when it comes to cars. And early on, man, I mean, I reached out and credit to them. This was early days of Twitter, now X, right? Depending when you're listening to this. And they might change the name again in the future. Who
Yeah,
knows? It
you
might
never
be
know. You never know.
XXX. Like, we don't know. But I reached out to people. I grew a little bit of a following on Twitter early on before. I mean, it is what it is now. And I would just reach out to people in the DMs. And you had people like Carlos Lago, who at the time was at Motor Trend, a lot of people from the Hooniverse, a lot of even Smoking Tires' original producer, I believe his name was Chris Hayes, and I just interviewed them, right? And I got all their back, Rob Ferretti, a ton of these people who I just would watch for years, and I said, I want to reach out to them, interview them genuinely because I was interested in them, what they did, and that kind of just fueled a lot of the more interest in working with people in the automotive world, whether it's local shops, digital businesses, direct to consumer brands, didn't matter. And I learned a lot, made a lot of cool, friends and relationships or whatever. And then the podcasting world just kind of blew up to this thing where everyone's got a podcast, but at the same time, not everybody's doing it well, in my opinion, just as somebody who's been doing it for a long time behind the scenes and in front of a camera. And finally, we're kind of here 12 years later, and I'm like, okay, there's enough info, enough knowledge, enough know-how to put out a product that I think people want to listen to, because the world from 12 years ago in the car industry has shifted drastically. I mean, I was also hotshotting at the time, from manufacturers' warehouses to body shops, collision repair, custom repair shops, or custom builders, parts, panels, motors, transmissions, all that kind of stuff. And I was always around cars, and I would see what people would build. And I know you've got an opinion on builders. We can talk about that, or just
Hey,
collectors at
we might get canceled on the first episode.
it was a good run. Episode one, the pilot. It's
We had
over.
a great start to the combustion podcast.
Yeah, right. But dude, I mean, I don't see that type of virality in the industry. Maybe because I'm not looking as hard, or I'm not in it as much. I'm not immersed in it like I was. But I mean, when I would drive around, for instance, Houston, even Austin, Dallas, and stuff, there was just so much noise and enthusiasm, especially from younger people who wanted to do those things, and then the slightly older people that were doing the things. But now it's kind of like crickets, and I just kind of wonder why.
Yeah, I mean, if you're talking about just the overall, general kind of aftermarket stuff and the building and the localized stuff, we definitely have more shops now. We definitely have more people doing it, but we have it, it's very siloed, right? So if you look at it, mechanics are very siloed from body shops when they used to work very hand in hand. Now the body shop world is the body shop world, and everybody doesn't touch that if you're not in the body shop world. Well, I grew up in a time where you may have a body shop, a mechanic, a tint shop, an audio shop, and they'd be like, their doors would be like touching, So I think for a lot of it's just, commercial space has changed. Cities have changed. I mean, look, you and I are both familiar with Houston. I mean, just in the last 12 years, look at the suburbs of Houston and the way those have exploded. You have less connection to the old businesses and new businesses in the area that are growing. Katy, you got, the Woodlands, you got all those little suburbs of Houston, where now the center of the city, nobody wants to go there, right? Because they live in the suburb and they go, well, that's now a 3-hour commute every day to get down into the center of the city. So I think just the expansion of cities have caused it. Like you said, there used to be a camaraderie to all of this where all these businesses hung out all the time. Upholstery shops would be down at the detailer shop. You just have less commercial space like that, right? So that's why you're feeling that way. And then, of course, the internet makes everybody feel like they're homeless, right? Where you don't know where somebody's shop is. You don't know where the work's coming out of. You don't know all their partners in the business. A lot of silent partners in businesses now, which is what we see a lot in my world, where all of a sudden somebody throws up like a 50,000 square foot building and it's like pimped out, and you go, where'd those guys come from? And then you find out there's 5 investors and they know nothing about cars. And so I think all of that has changed in my life, and it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just a reality thing.
Yeah, and the enthusiasm part, I'd love to get your feedback on, because so let's just say 10 years ago, right? For people that don't know, you don't look like you're in your early 40s, but you're in your early 40s.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm in my mid 30s, and 10 years ago, man, can't you just you can throw a rock at an example of an event maybe that would be going on, or a group of people that were enthused about certain aspects of the auto world because maybe a certain manufacturer was making a good, cool lineup of cars, or the aftermarket for a certain existing lineup of cars were coming out and it was hot. Now, I don't sense that much enthusiasm for most manufacturers' lineup of cars.
No, look, the all the craze for people that are starting to get, you look at that 35 to 55 age group, that's where a lot of your enthusiasts are, because that's kind of when you have a little bit of money to buy something. You've made a little money, hopefully, you have a little extra disposable. You're seeing all that going to analog cars, right? I have a 2008 BMW M3 6-speed sedan that I bought on a whim just because I was like, I was on Bring a Trailer, the deal fell through, I could swoop in there, talk to didn't have to pay any fees, whatever, could do it offline. I think, look, what you're seeing now from modern offerings, it's very rare to see anybody get really enthusiastic. Look, M2, GT3, yeah, man, there's some enthusiasm around that stuff, but the analog stuff has way more enthusiasm around it. People are not really loving all of the intrusive tech and new offerings. I think that's one of the big things nobody's talking about. And again, we're talking about a small segment of the car business, which is the enthusiast, okay? In this case that we're talking about. No car manufacturer hardly ever builds to what the enthusiast wants. They're just going to build what they want to build, and if you like it, you like it. If you don't buy it. So the enthusiast is not thought about very much. Look at the Supra debacle from Toyota. I think that's one of the saddest modern decisions that's ever been made on a car that stunk in the 90s. The original Supra was not good, okay? Or the Fast and Furious Supra was not good, I should say.
How dare you?
That was not a good car. They got lucky that a movie took off. And what did Toyota do with it? They said, hey, let's outsource this to BMW. I think it was an insult because guess what? You got lucky anyway. Nobody liked the Supra. For everybody that was there, the Supra was not a great vehicle. And so you have to soup it up to make it great.
Yeah.
And so when you look at it, the enthusiasm is now for, you're a golf guy. Golf R has enthusiasm. There's some JDM. But look, man, a lot of the JDM enthusiasm is what can I import? What's coming off the restricted list? What can be imported with no problem? I think it is a sign, and I think a lot of people are saying this. I don't know what the enthusiast market looks like in 20 years because all these 2008, 2005, 1999, those cars are going to be gobbled up. And if they go to a chop shop, they're not going to be usable again. So finding original examples is going to become impossible in 20 years of just normal cars that we all love.
I think that's a great topic to kind of even expand on because I know some people that are still and have been or that are in now and have been in the car industry for a long time, like in the anywhere from actual manufacturers to PR and marketing for some of these manufacturers. So I guess in the corporate kind of roles and even hands-on roles, and they still love the industry. They love cars. They love automotive, anything automotive. But even they, in their mind, say, if I had to do something else, like let's for instance say they have hobbies that they want to maybe monetize, or they have hobbies that they just want to kind of scale to a degree that's just beyond their garages, they almost don't want to make it a automotive hobby that they monetize or that they scale or grow because they feel like it's just not going to be there anymore. And that is a huge bummer. When I hear from people who are actually like in the trenches, they're like, I don't want to grow this outside of my garage because it doesn't have a future to them. Do you agree to that?
Man, I've been hearing this for 20 years, is that, like I'll give you an example. We're going to get to a place where, you're not going to need to put tint on cars. The manufacturer is going to do it. We've tinted more cars in the past 20 years than we did the previous 20 years. And we're going to tint more cars the next 20 years. Can things change? Yes. I mean, look at paint protection film as an example. Look at tune shops as an example. To find a tune shop 15 years ago, you had to look. You now can just put it into Google and you're going to find 5 tune shops within 10 miles of your house. So I hear all of these things. That's not how it plays out, though, is because there's still going to be something to do on cars. Now, look, this all comes from the EV conversation, right? There's a lot of people that have a very negative outlook on cars because they think, when this thing goes EV, we're going to go to an all-appliance situation that basically they're going to have a 3 to 5 year shelf life. Then they're going to be tossed in the bin, and you're going to go get another one. I don't think we're seeing that play out that way, though. They can't sell EVs. And when they do sell them, they lose 50% of their value in 5 minutes. So we're very far away from the EV thing. Because remember, if everybody went EV from a manufacturing perspective right now, every one of them would be out of business within a year. That's how bad EV sales are. That's how bad the aftermarket for EVs are. You have the Ford CEO that's basically said, hey, we can't make money with battery technology and putting a $50,000 battery into a large SUV. So if you want a small car, we can help you out. The large stuff, it doesn't work. So I think people are looking at that, but here's what I was told. When Tesla came out, there was going to be no aftermarket for Tesla. What have we seen? A bunch of people that weren't into cars get into cars through their Tesla, PPF, tint, color change wraps, aftermarket parts, lips, spoilers, name it. I mean, everything. There's many businesses in the aftermarket that would have failed had Tesla not existed. So the fear is also fear-mongering. Aftermarket for cars are always going to be here. Somebody's going to want to do something to their car, even something that's an appliance like Tesla.
I love the optimism coming from you, seeing as you have worked in it for a long time and you've seen kind of the ups and downs of the world. If you had to put your finger on something that was hot and then just completely went away and never kind of resurfaced, is there anything you can think of?
Oh, audio and
Oh,
visual
of
in
course,
cars. Like,
audio. How
dude,
did I forget? Oh
yeah,
my God,
audio and
yeah.
visual in cars. I mean, for those people that weren't there used to be an AV shop on every corner, speaker boxes, and I mean,
Usually
look,
they were doing more than audio, if you know what I'm saying. They were running some other
yeah,
businesses out of
100%.
us.
They were definitely doing things out of the back of those AV shops. But look, that's what my career. I went through a lot of various stages, but one of the stages that I really enjoyed was I got into the show truck world. Okay, where I was really helping these guys refine their setups, and look, they were building them. I wasn't, but I would help them get to the show, and they were trying to win big money. Their truck shows were really big. Guys would take Silverados and they would put, subs and fiberglass and all, and they'd paint the inside of the bed where all the speakers and all the audio was, and you had all this intricate fiberglass work and all this kind of stuff, right? And that was the coolest thing to see because it was true innovation at the time. You probably, Crutchfield was like a big magazine everybody got in the mail, right? And that just went away. But here, I mean, it's still around. Don't get me wrong, but that just kind of you had so much tech in your car now that there's only probably maybe 10 elite audio shops in the country. One of the guys that we deal with, we have to fly in from Los Angeles to Vegas. Like, especially if you're doing stuff in a Ferrari type of thing, like Ferrari especially, I got one guy I can use who can take the dash off. We had, for anybody that's ever been in a Ferrari, the stereo is not good. So we had a customer, and he owns multiple Ferraris, say, I want to be able to hear my music. And I'm like, hey, dude, we got to fly this guy in from LA. He thought I was crazy, went to a cheaper guy. All of the warning lights came on. The car basically shut itself down. He had to come in from LA. So audio, visual, TVs in the headrest, all those things that used to be really intricate work. You'd have to reupholster the headrest because you put the TV. That stuff's largely gone now. It's just not. I mean, it's around, but it's very, very minimal.
Do you have an opinion? And this is actually a perfect segue into, because it's SEMA week. This is obviously going to drop, if it ever drops, way, way into the future. But it is SEMA week, so I want to segue into that because the car audio world and that kind of stuff is a perfect example of things that probably have gone, to the wayside at SEMA. But I got to ask you about car audio. Do you have a preference in who manufacturers use in cars these days for audio?
I don't, because I think it's so dependent on the layout inside the car, inside the SUV.
Yep.
So I think a lot of people would get a bad name and say, I don't like this stereo, but they don't realize that the manufacturer screwed up the placement of the way everything was laid out. I think the BMW M7 comes to my mind, where I think the audio in that, for as much audio visual as they have in those now, I'm just like, I don't think they laid the stereo and all the tweeters and everything out properly. It just doesn't sound right. And by the way, a lot of car manufacturers almost have that surround sound now, which I think sounds horrible for me personally. Yeah. But you can't get away from it, right? So that audio company didn't create a bad system. It's just that surround sound type of feel in the car where it's not so direct at you, I don't think sounds as good. And I'm not an audio guy, okay? That's not my expertise. This is just me having been around it. I think a lot of it is setup, and a lot of it is many manufacturers don't give it a lot of thought anymore.
Yeah.
They're worried about the screen, right? They're worried about the infotainment system and whatever. I think very few companies do. There's some add-ons that you can add on where they put a different system in that I think does very well. But just straight from the manufacturer, most of them you're just going to get something very low to mid level, no matter how much you spend for a car. And like I told you, go spend for a Ferrari and try to listen to the stereo. I mean, you'll just be like, this is the worst sounding thing I've ever heard. I
That's
mean,
such a
it's just an
bummer.
afterthought, right?
I hate it because for me, like usually when you trim up a car, you have to get wherever the good audio starts, you got to go from there up if you can.
Yes. Yep.
Right. So when you get a car nowadays, and we can obviously talk about pricing as I was referencing this Bloomberg article, but if you're going to get, for instance, like my wife recently got a new Mazda, right? New CX-5. I love CX-5. I love the CX-90. It's just way too big for our family.
Mazda's done a great job on their SUV.
Great job. That CX-90 is awesome. It's just way too big. But a lot of the top tier, the turbo trims and up, they have Bose audio. Bose audio is usually great, right?
Yeah.
But a great point that I don't hear anybody talk about, and I think Savage Geese is the only YouTube channel as far as reviewers that actually review the audio and the waves in the car and all this kind of show you like a
I like
diagram
that
of it.
channel.
Yeah, it's a great channel, very, very in depth and thorough. But I don't hear them mention that. And I guess maybe it's just something you should think of that, like, if it doesn't sound good, just look at the way the car is laid out. And you're right, because a lot of people they'll attack the manufacturer of, for instance, Bose or Harman Kardon or whoever.
Yeah.
Like, for instance, in my GTI, I have the Fender audio, which they stopped using, I think. And it's awesome. It's the best audio. But again, it's a small car. It's more compact. You're gonna feel more of everything. Even the sub that's in the back in the hatch. You're gonna feel more of that versus a 3-row SUV.
Yeah, and you look at it, it's what is it bouncing off of, right? This is what
Right.
the audio guys will tell you. Where's everything located? Where's it pointed? Look, if you're taller, if you're shorter, if you're in a bigger vehicle, a smaller vehicle, I don't think manufacturers have the time to think about it. I think a lot of times they pawn it off and say, hey, we're going to bring in H&K, we're going to bring in Fender, let them deal with it. We'll plug it into the spots that we have on the door, or we'll put the tweeters. I mean, to me, you put the tweeters up by the windshield, which a lot of manufacturers do now. It's always going to sound bad because the immediate
Like in the
bounce off
pillar,
the
right?
glass. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's all going to sound bad. For me, I don't like that. I like more in the door, in the floor. That's also how I grew up, right? Is that you felt the sub from below you or behind you,
Yeah.
and you felt off the door, and everything kind of came up through that wave system. And again, you got to connect your phone, right? So does your phone and the relay into the system? That's why a lot of audiophiles, they'll only use Tidal. They won't use Spotify. They won't use Apple. And so all of these little things become a topic of conversation that you go, I can't believe this all kind of went away.
Yeah.
Right? Is that it was so massive. And by the way, I mean, hearing bass at a stoplight was a big part of my growing up, in the car world. And look, you see that more in Houston than I do here in Vegas.
For sure.
Houston definitely still has some of that cultural car culture. Let's hear the bass. Let's get into it. But there's many cities that's not a part of the car culture at all. And that couldn't have been said probably even 10, 12 years ago. That was still a big part of the car culture. It's mainly gone now. It's very minor pockets of enthusiasts that are still into that.
Dude, when I was in high school and I got my first vehicle, I had a sub with a box in the back, and the fuse would always pop out or blow or something.
yeah.
And if I was getting to school and that sub went out, I'd pull over, I'd put a new fuse in there, and make sure I was bumping when I got there.
Got to make sure those things are hitting.
Heck yeah,
So,
dude.
I mean, for me, these are all kind of the fun conversations, and I think this is why and you're a big part of why we're doing this is we just need to talk about stuff. The way it was yesteryear, but also, don't glorify yesteryear either. There was a lot of bad work.
Sure.
Of all this AV work we're talking about, 90% of it was garbage.
Yeah.
10% were doing great work, right?
Why do you think my fuses kept popping? It was not good work. It was not good work.
I mean, so when I look at it, it's this is where we get into the manufacturer. The manufacturer said we don't have to worry about it as much. People are going to they're going to do Apple CarPlay. So they're going to attach and then they're going to run it through there. So who cares? Our infotainment works. We're out. And so I think that's car manufacturing 101 in today's day and age is there's a lot of things that are afterthoughts.
So you're heading into SEMA week. You got a lot of things going on
Yeah.
there, projects, people, meetings, and whatnot. But as somebody who's never been to, believe it or not, I've never been to SEMA. Earlier on, when I was younger, that was kind of one of the things like you wanted to do,
Oh,
and just
100%.
hate to say it, like I haven't had that thought in maybe 6 or 7 years, if not longer.
Internet
So
changed everything.
internet changed everything. So maybe give listeners a little bit of an insight on what, or if you could even pinpoint when the internet kind of shifted what SEMA was and what it is now.
Well, look, the moment that broke SEMA was COVID. Okay. The next thing is SEMA has lost the plot of the movie, meaning the people that run it. And I say this with great respect because I've been going to SEMA for 15 years. You go back to 2010, first year I went to SEMA, you never saw anything as impressive. Wall to wall, and for people that have never been to the Las Vegas Convention Center, there's nothing bigger in the world. I mean, it is the most square footage. They add square footage all the time. They add new halls all the time. And for the first time coming out of COVID, there was empty halls. There was places that they couldn't sell enough booths. There were places where they used to have food trucks for years, cooking up barbecue. Even when food trucks weren't a thing, they'd have people out there barbecuing. They'd put a grill station. Then they'd have all these battery companies that would line up their trucks in these certain area of that's all gone. And so what happened is the internet, YouTube, all that kind of stuff took over. Then COVID hit. Now, for me, what SEMA's become is about the events. So for me, I just spent the weekend at the Rolls-Royce event, and that's special because not a lot of people are there. And you get to hear from Rolls-Royce about, hey, we got this special thing, we got that. Now, if it came down to Rolls-Royce or Bentley, I think I'm more of a Bentley guy. I'm not old enough. I'm not 72 years old trying to, drive my. Although I have great respect for the build quality of Rolls-Royce, I just go, I'm just more of a Bentley guy.
Sure.
I think when you look at this, SEMA's become a place to meet people, meet up with people from around the globe that you have an internet relationship, business relationship with. It's become a place to set dinner meetings, set lunch meetings, walk the show for things you're interested in. But the transition from what it used to be to now, for a guy like me, it's sad to see. Because I'm going to tell every young guy out there, there's still nothing like being able to go and see paint booths in one hall, tools in this hall, wheels and tires in this hall, detailing products, paint protection film, overlander stuff. You can see it all at SEMA. Now, to SEMA's credit, for those that don't know, they've become very strict on you better have a business license. You're going to have to prove that it's your company or you're employed there, pay stubs, that kind of stuff. So they've started to realize that they got a little lax in letting the general public around the show. And the general public has no business being at things like SEMA because honestly, you just clog up the relationship, right? That you're trying to build with other people you were trying to do business with. And so I think they've gotten a lot more serious, but I'll say this across the board, SEMA's still really special to me. So I may tell people the truth about SEMA, but I love SEMA. I still love going there and catching up with people that I've known the last 20 years.
So if people are seeing this on the screen because we ended up releasing this and we didn't get canceled because we didn't say anything silly on the podcast, what I mean, is it, so when you look at these pictures of all these people, are a lot of these just spectators or are these really people within the industry?
No, they do something in the industry. They do something in the industry. They could be a mechanic shop. They could be, they could have softwares to help you run your shop. They could be, somebody that builds an exhaust system. They could be, somebody that supplies metal to different manufacturer. They could do anything inside of the business. And I think, one of the things that everybody has to understand is that there are so many things that are in the car business that you have no idea are in the car business, right? I mean, think about all the software around running a body shop.
Right.
Well, all of those little companies are represented, and they may bring 10 people, 50 people, 100 people on their staff. It's the amount of attendance. I think CES, which is the Consumer Electronics Show, and
Hmm.
SEMA are the two biggest trade shows in the world, if I'm not mistaken.
I believe you're
So
right. Yeah.
SEMA's that big.
You know what? I pulled it up the video or the photos rather. I never even looked at the convention center how big it was.
Dude, they have tunnels. You know that,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Oh no, they have tunnels. Well, I knew
yeah.
Vegas had tunnels, but that makes sense.
The Tesla boring company,
Right.
you can take Tesla's underground tunnels into different parts of the convention center. That's how big the convention center is.
Dang. Yeah.
Right? So
So on
you
the
get in a
diagram.
Tesla and you go underground and go from hall to hall.
Well, yeah. What are you gonna do? Get into a Volkswagen EV? Like you can't
Yeah,
do
yeah,
that.
and I hear you. I hear you. Yeah, no, trust me, nobody's buying those. So,
How
yeah, they're
dare
not.
you?
They might give them to the boring company and say, hey, just pay us $1,000. We're going to be sitting on these things.
Yeah. Right. Just have people sitting them while they're waiting for the Tesla to come around. So they're not standing outside.
Yeah, no, it's massive, man. People don't
Wow.
understand everything that's going on.
Wow, wow. Okay, so as we haven't really pinpointed how long we're doing episodes too, so we can just be honest with the audience here. Do you know how long most commutes are these days in America?
See, I don't, but my guess would be 45 minutes.
It's right at 40 minutes, supposedly, from the last study I read. So, I've always, because you and I, whether we're doing stuff or we're driving, like you're usually listening to a book or a podcast or something if you can.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so you don't really care if it's how long it is because you can pause it, you can come back to it. But a lot of people like to have something they start and then they finish it, in that one duration. So a drive or a workout, which is usually 40 minutes too.
yeah.
So anyway, we're at the half-minute mark or a half-hour mark. You let me know when you feel like it's a good wrapping up point because I did want to get your thoughts on, and this is kind of like a complete segue into something different. But before we started recording, we were talking about just the car market prices, and there's an article from Bloomberg where let me ask you this: what do you think the average price, or rather, a monthly note for a car is right now in the United States?
So forever, and look, I work in this part of the market, so I don't. A lot of people that I buy cars for don't care about the payments. Let me be clear.
Of course,
But when we crested $350 a month as the average payment, that was a big deal. Then we crested $500. I think we're probably somewhere in the sevens now. Would be my guess.
748.
Yeah, let me tell you something. 350 was a big deal. I mean, 350 was a big deal when that was the average
Right.
payment. Then we blew by 500.
Yeah.
500 only hung around for a minute. And then COVID hit again, not to bring that up, but that's the reality is that essentially we had monthly payments double probably in a 4-year period.
So for those that are into cars, but they're not, like, for instance, you've always made this joke when we talked about things in the past where you're like, you look over and you got this guy at the stoplight that's got a laptop on his seat. The car's probably not that enjoyable to drive if it's a daily, for example.
100%.
And you're not the kind of guy that's going to go and tune your car to that degree where you have like your data logging your daily and you're just like, you know what I mean?
Not
You're
my
not going to
thing.
do that.
Not
Not
my
your
thing.
thing. So you're probably also not going to, skimp out on a good ride, but there's got to be, like, for most average Americans that aren't in the Bloomberg article literally says that essentially everything's for the more fluent, right? These days,
Yes.
like it feels like everything,
100%.
right? So if you're not quite there and you're kind of still falling in the middle, what is a justifiable price range for a car these days?
Well, look, that's the whole problem we have, right? Is that essentially everything that should cost $35,000 to $50,000 costs $65,000 to $80,000. That's the big problem right now. For everybody listening to this that falls in the, hey man, I'm getting started, or I'm just a good middle class family, and we want to transport our kids, or I just want to have a decent car to drive around. The car market has left a lot of people behind because of that exact price point. Things that should cost 35 to 50 grand are costing $65,000 to $85,000. And I can tell you this, there's not very many cars built, especially to the global market, that should crest $80,000. Think about $100,000 car used to be like, you couldn't believe that car was $100,000. And that's not 25 years ago. We're talking 5 or 6 years ago.
Yep.
You'd be like, hey, that's a $100,000 Range Rover. Now you're like, that's a $220,000 special edition Range Rover edition.
Right. So the average price was 48 grand. Now it's so the average price of a new car this year is 48 grand, up 21% from 5 years ago.
Yeah. So if you look at what's 21%, that'd be $9,600. So there's the $10,000 difference, right? So $4,800 would be 10%, 20% would be $9,600, right? So you have $9,600. You got a $10,000 spread in 5 years. You're not getting $10,000 worth of more material. You're not getting $10,000 worth of driving experience. You're not getting $10,000 of more durability. We're actually seeing more quality control issues, i.e., when did you ever think you'd see 2 massive engine recalls from Toyota, which you've had this year? That was almost largely unheard of. In some cases, having to replace full motors in Toyotas. We've had massive jump in price. And let's be honest, the $10,000 average that it's gone up, most people aren't the average. They pay
Right.
$20,000. You've seen the Hummer EV stuff where guys are going to trade in their Hummer EV and they're $100,000 underwater.
6 figures. Yep.
You know, I mean, think about this. We have people. I got an actual personal feeling of this. I got somebody I know on a Kia Telluride that's $50,000 underwater on a Kia Telluride. This is unbelievable. Let me give you one of the scariest things that's been told to me in the last year. I have a connection with somebody who runs a massive bank, and he runs a lot of stuff behind the scenes at the bank of risk and where we should loan our money and this and that. This is the exact quote he told me a year ago. He says it's still true today. I talked to him about 30 days ago. He goes, the only reason the car market has not gone full bust is because we don't have enough tow trucks to go repo the cars that people have not paid on.
Dang.
He said if we had enough tow trucks, we would collapse the car market.
Wow.
100%.
That was recently?
That was within the last 30 days, but he told me that a year ago.
Oh, wow.
He knew it was the problem a year ago. He says we can't repo them fast enough. If you go to auto auctions today, and for those that have never been to an auto auction, they're very localized, and a lot of the auto auction can become the repo lane. So dealerships will take inventory, dump it into the auto auction. The auto auction's the lifeblood of the car business that the consumer never sees. So even if you go here in Las Vegas, you got 2 massive auto auctions in a city like Las Vegas. You go to any state, any city, you usually have auto auctions that is how cars move around, money moves around the car market. The fastest is in the auto auction business. That's how small car lots get their cars, et cetera, right? And so, and even companies like CarMax, they run their own auto auction outside in the back of a CarMax, right? So you can go to an auction in the back of a CarMax because they don't want to sell them on the lot. Whatever that car, for whatever reason, it's not always just junk. It's actually good cars sometimes, right? And so when you look at the situation that we're in right now, the car market, we've never seen this amount of negative equity. We've never seen, and look, the EV negative equity is to a level we've never seen in the car business for the consumer. We've seen that on the very upper echelon. I just bought a McLaren, now it's worth half of what I paid. We've never seen somebody buy a $65,000 EV and the next day it be worth $30,000. That's not that quickly. We've seen it cumulative over their ownership that happen. We've never seen it happen instantaneously. And so we have a really, really, really weird situation where I would tell people you got to be way more savvy in the car market today than any time in my career, or you're just going to get burnt to a level.
Yeah, burnt to a crisp.
Yeah.
So Edmunds recently did a survey, right? So a recent survey by Edmunds found that half of American shoppers expect to pay $35,000 or less for a new car. So let's just assume that during the last 4 years of the crazy, COVID era, you didn't need a car and you weren't really looking at the market, and maybe you just saw it on the news and you're like, okay, that's crazy, but it's just an afterthought. You go into a showroom and you're expecting to pay somewhere between $35,000 and $40,000 for what you thought at the time 6 years prior was a top tier car or a car that met your standards. And then you find out that it's $50,000 or above. People are just walking away, right? So that makes sense from the average trade-in 6 years ago, which means that those buyers, the last purchase, blah, blah, blah. So yeah, and the last time they purchased a car 6 years prior would have been in the mid-30s, which makes sense. Again, the 10-year, $10,000 increase, and then some depending on how you spec it out. So they found that 73% of customers are just holding off on buying it because of cost.
Yeah, we get more calls today of people trying to refurbish their car, paint correction, clean up my interior, this and that. There's just a fact you're not going to get around that everybody blames the interest rate, right? So as we've seen interest rates go up, all the manufacturers, all the dealers, they'll all go on CNBC and they'll go, well, the problems we're having are interest rate driven. Okay, to an extent that's true, but that's the symptom of the problem. The other problem is you're charging too much for cars. You don't have enough base level models in the $25,000 to $45,000 range that people can buy, that the car doesn't have massive QC issues. It does have a decent interior. It's not a piece of crap. You and I had a laugh about the Dodge Hornet. The Dodge Hornet is $42,000, let's say. You've driven one as a rental. I've seen them. I've been inside of them, and the exact thing I told you is, what a great $20,000 vehicle.
18 exact to be exact.
Yeah, I said 18 to 25. So the high price should be 25 for your top package, and there should be a base level model with steely rims and a radio, not an infotainment system. That should be $18,000. When you get in that car, that's what it feels like, and you can't deny that you were in one. So when I said that number, you go, that sounds about right. Yeah, that's a good car at $22,000. Not a great car at $42,000. And
No,
so
man.
as we haven't been given more to the consumer, let me explain something to you. Tech is not more. Largely, many of us don't use the tech. You know how many people I know that have radar cruise control and have never used it? So if I
love
charge person $2,500 for radar cruise, they didn't get anything out of it. And by the way, they were never clamoring for it anyway. Right? So you just added $2,500 on for this, and then another $2,500 on for that, and another this, and another that. And I get a lot of this stuff is regulation, but I said this to you before. If all of the price increase, am I supposed to believe that it's the tech that the EU and the U.S. government has told you to put in the cars, and you don't have a choice? Well, just like on sales tax, you tell me it's sales tax. You make it clear on that invoice, I'm not making money off this sales tax. Don't get mad at me. If all of this increase is because the EU and America have told you as a manufacturer that you have to put this safety stuff in there, then why don't you tell me that extra $15,000 is a government tax? That's what I would do. But magically, they don't do that because it's not exactly true. And so you're seeing a lot of price increase that, to me, is laughable at best. I mean, I've told you before, I can show you every car and a better car with 5,000 miles on it, and I can pay less of a price for it. And so I think it's just complete and utter dishonesty that we needed all of this stuff and we needed all this price increase. There's a lot more under the surface.
So to piggyback off of that, it continues to say, new car loans now, I said 748 earlier, it's actually 767. It's up 17% from 4 years ago. And according to them, 1 in 6 new buyers this year will take on payments over $1,000.
Oh, 100%.
Right?
Have you seen the Tahoe TikToks?
No.
Wait.
What is your car payment where they walk around the Chevy dealership?
I mean, dude, a Chevy Tahoe, people are like, yeah, my Chevy Tahoe cost me $1,298 a month. And I'm like, have you been in a Chevy Tahoe? Nice vehicle. I wouldn't mind owning one for $550 a month.
Exactly.
I'm not going to own one for $1,200. I mean, that
face is a still right there. That's a gift right there.
What are we talking about? And again, I'm not banging on the Chevy Tahoe.
Right.
I'm saying when you say it out loud, when things don't make sense, for anybody that was there in 2008 when the real estate market crashed, and you knew that buddy or that family member that bought a house that was worth $150,000, but he paid $700,000 for it, you go, yeah, man, it was $100,000 worth of construction. It wasn't you weren't in Malibu, on a lot that the world's never going to see again. You were in Phoenix, Arizona, with $100,000 worth of construction. It doesn't add up. And that's exactly where we're at in the car market. The car market's never going to be the real estate market. So don't say that I'm saying there's going to be this massive collapse, okay? Could it happen? Yes, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about when you sit in a car, it has a feel to it. It has a drive feel, it has a quality feel, and you're never going to sit in a Chevy Tahoe or a Chevy Silverado and go, this is $1,300 a month worth of quality. It's not going to happen. And so therefore, that's what doesn't make sense. And we're being told this is what has to go. What people don't realize is the manufacturers are playing a certain game I've told you about. They're giving you $500 worth of upgrades in these higher package systems, and they're charging you another $10,000, $15,000 for that $500 worth of upgrades.
So again, we're reading this and we're recording this and reading these in November. It's actually election day. So what a day to actually record a podcast that's going to be stamped in time, right? All
Yeah.
kinds of crazy stuff going on. So as of the recording of this on election day 2024, loan rates are averaging 7.1% for new cars and 11.2 for used cars.
Yep. And that's healthy. People don't want to hear this. That's a healthy interest rate. That's what cars
Right.
should be. That's what should have been going on. We got very lucky for a very long period of time with low interest rates. This is more normal for those that don't know. Cars are a very risky loan because most people don't have 750 plus credit. You know, they are a credit risk at some point, and everything below 750 is some level of credit risk. Okay? That's why they have that breaking point in a lot of because there's a risk. And remember with vehicles, somebody can store it in a garage and you're never able to tow it, so you're never able to get the asset back. There's a lot of loss in the car business. And so 7%, could we all make the argument, car loans should be 5.5%? We all know they shouldn't be 3%. Okay? That wasn't healthy for the economy of cars. Here's what I can tell you though. Every single one of these car manufacturers has a financing arm that they're able to offer 0% financing. So if they want to sell cars and they want to do right by you, they can finance you at 0%. They can finance you at 2.5%. They own their own financing arm. Magically, they don't do that unless they're trying to unload inventory of something. They go, hey, why don't you come back to our
Good.
dealership? We got 0%
Funny you just said
finance.
that. Funny you just said that because Volkswagen's doing that with their EVs.
Oh yeah, I mean, dude, they are going to have to pay people to take some of these EVs, and then you see the news, and people are talking about EVs like there isn't some massive problem, and it's very easy to understand. And I'm an EV fan. I think you have nothing against EVs. I'm not this maniac about EVs. I think if you sit in traffic, there's no better car to sit in traffic in than an EV. It's quiet. You're not, you know what I mean? It's very comfortable. I don't have an issue with them. Here's the issue. The battery technology is lacking. Not everybody always talks about the range. The problem is people don't trust buying the used EV because they don't think the company's going to stand behind the battery. That is the issue in the EV market. It has nothing to do with range. Range is way worse than what they tell you. You live in a hot or cold climate, you know what I'm talking about. Lucid probably has the most dependable range and it's the longest range. I got a buddy in a lemon law situation with Lucid right now in Phoenix, Arizona. He literally wrote me a text that said, I've never once got more than 30% of the range I was supposed to get when it was hot in Phoenix. Okay? So everybody thinks that's the biggest thing. I'm telling you it's not. It's because people don't trust the used market on EVs, which totally destroys the whole EV market. Until you fix the used part of EVs, where I can go buy a used EV and trust that you're going to stand behind your battery technology, and if something fails, you're going to replace it within the first 5 to 7 years, the EV market's not going to fix itself. The
Is
car
that on the
market is driven
horizon?
off the used market.
Is that on the horizon, you think? Like if I literally, I can go up and down, whether I'm in Austin or I'm in Houston, I can drive up a major highway and see a batch of EVs for sale in a used lot.
100%.
And they're there and they've been there forever.
Yep. I just told you. I mean, look at a Model S. I can get a 2018 Model S with 30,000 miles on it. I can pay $22,000.
Oh yeah, you told me that off the recording. So is it really around that price?
Yeah. I mean, I told you. I said it's almost getting to the point where I have to buy a Model S because I'm like, it's a fun car to own. It's a fun car to drive. I don't have to worry about the range because for those that don't know, inside my business, I have like 8 vehicles that I have access to, including my personal vehicles. So yeah, let's just plug this thing in and not have to pay for gas and goof around with this. It's $20,000.
Yeah.
It's almost like you can't believe that this is happening. But what people don't know, because people don't talk about it, is the new car market doesn't drive the way things go. It's what can I depend on in the used car market? So Toyota has a high resale value. I told you this earlier because you and I feel comfortable. Even if I buy a Toyota with 100,000 miles on it, I know I got another 200,000 miles in that thing. That's my belief as a consumer. I get an EV with 20,000 miles on it. I don't believe I got another 20,000 miles to go. So therefore, you have massive depreciation. Whether that's true or not is irrelevant. That's the consumer sentiment on battery technology, and the manufacturers like Tesla, Chevy, Ford, going to do the right thing when I take that into their dealership and go, for my battery cells are screwed, I need you to replace them. They're not that willing to do that. We've dealt with Tesla for the last 10 years on, we just had a Tesla die. I've had a Porsche Taycan kill itself at a light and completely brick itself. I'm telling you, consumers and manufacturers are not in line in this simple way. If my alternator goes out on my Toyota, I can get an alternator. Your battery screws up, you're not sure you can get the manufacturer to replace it. That's the problem.
And speaking of our boy Elon, I was mentioning that he was or somebody was talking about like a budget Tesla coming in the near future, right? So there's that, and then as this Bloomberg article that I've been referencing continues to say towards the bottom of it or somewhere in there, there's a lack of those cars that you've always referenced that are in the sub $20,000 range. Manufacturers are just shying away from it. So Ford, GM, Stellantis, and others abandoned the money losing, to quote them, money losing small cars that were once on the ramp up for buyers on a budget. Back in 2012, vehicles below $30,000 accounted for more than half of new cars on the market.
Yep.
That's not happening anymore.
And by the way, you can't tell me with automation that you can't find a way to turn a profit on those cars.
Yeah, make it make sense. How is it with automation was another word we were talking about before the podcast. With everything being so automated, sophisticated, just leveled up degrees upon degrees, how is it still a money-losing endeavor?
No, it's because they don't want to do it. That's why, because they've made a business choice. And this is, by the way, Stellantis' whole problem is based off what I'm about to tell you. And they made a corporate decision to do this. We don't want to sell the Jeep Grand Cherokee base model. We want to sell these 5 higher trim models, which you get very little value out of. And we're just not going to build that many of the base level. And so, screw it, we're going to force everybody to buy these higher tiered models. They made that corporate decision. So don't tell me you can't build a $25,000 car. You don't want to do it, and you want to tell your shareholders and the public like Bloomberg, hey, when you interview us, we have no way to make money on those. Well, bullshit. You move factories at costs of billions of dollars across the border into Mexico or wherever you move them, and you have no problem spending those billions of dollars. Instead of just upgrading your factory and saying, we're just going to add some more automation to the line and keep our workers there. Maybe we lay off a few heads, but we're gonna stay in America. But you have no problem spending billions of dollars to move the factory. So you're telling me those billions of dollars couldn't have been spent with all the technology upgrades we have in the manufacturing space? You have whole manufacturing facilities being built that are 100% automation. 100%. And they're being built in America. The car companies don't have the money to automate more of their process. They have to pick up and move across the border or take a supplier over to China. Give me a break. The math doesn't math. It's because you don't want to do it, right? And you don't want to do it because corporately you're saying, we don't want to sell that base Corolla. We want to sell the TRD Pro Corolla, put $500 worth of upgrades on it, and sell it for an extra $15,000. You've made that choice. And by the way, it's your company. Run it the way you want. Don't lie to Bloomberg. Don't lie to Wall Street that doesn't know any better. Just tell people what you did. That's Stellantis' whole problem right now. They have basically misled everybody as to why they have problems. They have problems because they built vehicles at a price point that nobody wants them.
So we've been through the ups and downs of all markets, cars, finance, houses, not to be completely hyperbolic, but when we look at the prices and the problems, like you said, that Stellantis is having, is there a point where if they don't change something, you could no longer see some of these big names in the automotive world?
Yeah, I mean, look, you have a real conversation of what's going to happen to Chrysler. I mean, Chrysler is the perfect example. I mean, that's been passed around to different companies for decades, and they've always struggled to figure out their place. Yeah, I mean, look, we saw Saturn go away in our life. I mean, Saturn, you didn't know a 16-year-old kid in your neighborhood that didn't have a Saturn. I mean, Saturns were good, cheap vehicles that people bought. And they ran. And I'm not saying they were the best quality vehicle, but they had a place in the market. Saturn's gone. I mean, it's just non-existent. When you look at Chevy, you go, they could probably use Saturn again, right?
RIP to what is it, Redline or Ion?
Yeah,
Redline.
I mean, look, what I'm saying is you these vehicles were there. I mean, the Dodge Neon, as an example, in my
I had an
lifetime.
SRT4, man.
Yeah, look, I'm here to tell you something. You can't sit here and tell me, like when people say, "Oh, nobody buys cars anymore." If they were $25,000, they'd buy them. Nobody's
Remember when they
buying.
advertised that? When
What's
they
that?
advertised the Neon, right? When they advertised the Neons, and then they eventually ended up getting to the SRT4 versions of them in the 2003, 4, 5. The whole thing was the fastest car under $20,000. It was like
Yeah,
19,998,
yeah,
and it was basically like it was a decent car with a Mitsubishi turbo and decent internals, and you could have fun with it for under 20 grand.
yeah. And by the way, right now that should be 25 grand. It shouldn't be
Yeah.
45 grand. It should be
No.
25 grand. With automation, with you making the processes better, with you sourcing your parts in a more. I mean, look, that's Ford's whole problem. So Ford, as a company, has the highest input costs of any of the major manufacturers. Fix the input cost. I mean, don't tell me you can't build a 20. You haven't fixed the thing in your business that's been a problem for 50 years, which is you can't figure out how to get your input costs down. And so when we look at this, and I don't want to oversimplify it, I know that building cars for money is a very tough business. Okay? There's also a lot of bullshit that's said where they make you believe they can't build a Grand Cherokee for 40 grand. Yes, they can. They made a business decision to add these bullshit extras and then hook their business to getting you to buy $1,000 worth of extras for an extra 20 grand. And that's where their profit spread's going to be. Instead of just saying, we built the car for 30, the dealer's going to sell it for 40, we sold it to the dealership for 35, and we called it a day. And so we make 5 grand a car. That wasn't good enough for them. That's the problem in all of this.
So, as we wrap up our inaugural pilot episode here, what could you tell somebody that is looking at needing a new car? Because you actually said something, I don't know if it was to me or where I heard you say it, but you said something to the effect of if you just don't need to upgrade your car, just don't upgrade it.
Yeah, don't upgrade it. I mean, here's the thing. Go to and have a connection to a really good mechanic shop. Okay? Go have them go through the vehicle. Even if you spend $1,000 on that, them going through the vehicle and fixing bushings or, whatever you need to do, fluids all throughout, whatever, go and get it ramped up, right? Go in there and have your vehicle completely diagnosed. Make sure you tell the mechanic, don't skip anything, go over everything. I understand there's going to be a bill involved. Be a good customer to a mechanic, and a good mechanic shop will take care of you. Secondly, most people don't cosmetically take care of their car, so they look at their car sitting in their garage and they think it looks ugly, and they're like, oh, I don't want to drive this anymore, and the interior's destroyed. It's a very simple fix. Go to your local detailer. Be ready to pay $500, $700, $800. And I know what you guys are thinking. Wow, you're telling me to go spend $2,000 on this car. We just told you people are paying $1,200 a month for a Tahoe. Do you want $1,200 a month for the next 84 months, which people are doing?
That's what most people are doing.
Okay, or do you want a one-time refurbish bill to get your car where you're proud of it again? I just think right now, if you're in that middle ground where a $1,000 car payment would hurt you personally, your family, you have real easy outs of going and getting your car brought up to date. I mean, I'll even tell you this. I had somebody who said he didn't like the tech in his vehicle. And I said, I can give you a name of a shop that can fix that tech. He's like, what do you mean? I said, there are aftermarket head units that you can put in there, and you'll have better tech than what you'd get in a new car. And he's like, oh, I didn't know that. It's like, yeah, man, one's $1,000. The other one is $1,200 a month for 84 months. Just go upgrade the tech, right? So when you look at all of this, man, I have fun with this, so everybody knows I enjoy these conversations. I enjoy looking at the market and helping customers. Yeah, man, a lot of people that I help were buying collector cars, were buying more expensive cars, they're buying a third car, a 10th car, or whatever. But in the last couple of years of my life, man, I've helped a lot of people with daily drivers, and you'd be surprised the value you can still get in a 4-year-old car with 5,000, 7,000, 8,000 miles on it. Yeah, man, somebody holds onto a car for 4 years and doesn't put 10 grand worth of mileage on it. It happens all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at the Texas market. I mean, it's riddled with cars that hardly have any miles on them. They're in great shape because the weather down there is not harsh to the car. And you go, let me get a car. And that's the other thing I tell everybody. Stop shopping in your area and start shopping nationally. It'll
That's a
change your
great
perspective.
That's a great tip, and also I'll give you some personal feedback. Be educated on what you're trying to buy, right? So, for instance, I don't know. I know everybody's not going to do this, but if you really want to feel like you weren't taken advantage of, do a little bit of extra research. I had 19 Mazdas on a list on a spreadsheet that I went through, and here's the thing. Here's the reason why. Because, like you said, in Texas, there is a large market of cars, a large pool of cars, low mileage, good conditions, but people were still asking a premium for it. I mean, literally new car prices. I said, "There's no way. Like, guys, come on, let's be reasonable here. I want you to make money. I want to get a good, deal on the wife's car, whatever. But let's meet in the middle somewhere." And of those 19, it got down to 4, right? Because no one else wanted to budge. And when I would go back, still 60 days later, those cars are still there. They're
Yep.
still on the lot. Once you get over 100 days, I mean, why would you not want to move the vehicle?
Well, no, I
Right?
mean, look, they get over 30 days and you start to have real problems at some dealerships because
100%. So
they have,
imagine they're on their 75 plus 100 days.
yeah, no, 100%. I'll leave everybody with a story. We had a customer that wanted a 4Runner for his wife. We saved $10,000 by going from Las Vegas, a 2-hour drive to Utah. $10,000 savings. That's
2 hours, we saved 7. We saved 7,000.
so by just going to another state for us, which by the way, for people that don't know, Utah is very close to Las Vegas. It's a drive. Not into Salt Lake, but St. George, those lower parts of Utah are very easy to get to. We could truck it down for a couple $100 if we didn't want to make the drive. By the way, you can ship cars anywhere, guys. It's very easy to do online. But we saved $10,000. I talked to the dealership here. I said, hey, if you price match Utah, the guy will come pick it up today. Not going to do it. Called the dealership in Utah, had them ship us the paperwork, sign the paperwork. The family, that customer went up there, got the car, came back, $10,000 for 4.5 hours of their life. Right? I mean, that's exactly why I'm saying I don't buy cars in Vegas. I don't buy cars in my local market. And I have every contact to buy any car and truck that I want. And they're still not going to budge because they don't have to. Right? And I just go, I'll go ahead and get I'll buy a Raptor from California. I'll buy a Raptor from Texas or Virginia before I just eat all of this money because it happens to be down the street from me.
So what you're saying is we're going to create Nick's Nice Rides guide, right? And people are going to be able to buy it because you know exactly what to do, and people, don't need to be getting gouged when they can just, buy something from Nick.
Yeah.
But
Hey,
in all seriousness,
autotrader.com. It'll be nickscars.com.
yeah, hell yeah, yeah. So in all transparency, like that is kind of the stuff we would like to do for people. Like there are resources that are out there, but if you're already going to tune into the podcast, you're going to watch the videos, the content, or whatever. Like in the future, those are the little things that we could probably put out for people that are listening to support the show and say, hey, like I like listening. They gave something to me, and it's a win-win.
Yeah, can't wait, man. This is going to be a lot of fun.
This was great. I've never, we haven't wrapped up an episode, so we're just going to wrap it up here and see what happens after I hit stop.
All right, guys. We'll talk to you next
See
time.
ya.